Welcome to the Starter Girlz Podcast, the show dedicated to the starter girl. She's an achiever, she's a creator, she's a magic maker, she's a dreamer, and she is doing all the things. I'm your host, Jennifer Loading, and welcome to this episode. Welcome to another episode of the Starter Girlz Show. I'm so excited about my guest today. She's amazing, great energy, great personality. I know we're going to have so much fun. Erin Harrigan is a Christian wife, empty nest mom, speaker, author, and business coach on a mission to help high-achieving Christian women scale their businesses without compromising their faith, bringing to bear her 30 plus years of corporate work and 10 plus years of network marketing. She helps women be more focused and fruitful by aligning business strategy and goals to God's truth through her customized business coaching, speaking, and award-winning podcast, Redefining Hustle, Pursuing Success as a Christian Woman. Erin, welcome to the show. So excited to have you here today.
I'm so excited to be here. Such an honor.
This is going to be so much fun. I love your bio. It's just, it's got that, I don't know, sparkle, something to it. I love it.
The only thing that's not in it, which I need to put back in, is that I love tacos.
I like tacos too.
Yeah. So I feel like people need to know that.
Yeah. I feel like there needs to be, when she's not being amazing, she wants you to know she loves tacos.
That's right. Right. Because everybody can relate to that.
Right. And she'll come speak to your audience for some tacos.
Right. Exactly. You know why? Because there's some meme out there. It says like tacos fall apart and we still love them.
Yeah, you're so true. I have seen that and you're so right. They do fall apart. They're hard to eat. You ever go through the drive-thru at Taco Bell to get tacos and try to drive, you know.
Right. No. It's not that kind of a food.
Yes, exactly. All right, Erin. So tell us, we kind of said a little bit about what you do here. I want to start off so our audience kind of knows who you are as an individual. Tell us what you are doing right now to help these women.
Yeah. So often what we coach on, what we teach on, etc., what we lead through is what we've been through. And so my short story is I'm a driver achievement chaser, recovering. I was on my way to the top. In my case, I found Jesus. He said, let me drive and you hold the map, which was the Bible. And then after he did a lot of pruning and took a lot of exits off of the highway that I was not planning or expecting, he said, now I want you to go share this with my ambitious daughters. And where I see the challenge is there's so much noise about what success needs to look like. What does it look like to be an entrepreneur? What milestones you need to hit? And no disrespect to anybody who wants to make, buku, right? Because it's not really the money that's the issue. It's the power and the pedestal that we put it on. Mm-hmm. But I see women who have had success and their outward success, there's plenty of evidence for it, but inwardly they're just tired, they're exhausted, they're typical overachievers. And that was me. That was totally me throughout corporate, throughout my network marketing business. Still struggle at times with it now. And that's really where I've been called to focus, is how do women have a level of success without breaking their backs to do it and listening to the ever shifting sands of the world. We were just talking about podcasts, right? Like have this microphone, have these headphones, like just go do it. And those standards are always changing. And so how do you anchor yourself in, whether it's, the Lord or some of your listeners, maybe that's not their belief system. Like how do you anchor yourself in something that's not just about you and your outcomes? And how do you build a business from a place of clarity, serenity, and fulfillment? That's what I do.
This is great, Erin. Well, and you touched upon some things that I think are, so true, because you and I both came from the network marketing space and we're both high achievers. And so I can certainly relate to that need to achieve. And then how do we do that without that burnout and just stress, right? Like, it's almost like, I was at a speaking engagement this past weekend, and I shared a little bit about my work and what I do. And we have very similar parallels in what we're doing and what we're trying to achieve and how we're trying to help women as a whole. And really my whole message when I was working, at this event this weekend was really, there is no separation in how we live our lives and how we conduct our businesses, and whatever's manifesting in one area shows up in the other area, but sometimes it manifests very differently. And sometimes that is burnout. Sometimes that's a health crisis. Sometimes that's a marital crisis or a financial crisis, right? Or it's our business. And so I think that it's so important that as high achievers, yes, how do we learn to be okay with this idea of high achieving, right? Because we want, naturally, that's our drive, but also recognize how do we find that harmony in that so we're not burning the candle at all ends and falling apart and
Yeah.
getting sick and all those things.
Yeah, yeah. And so often I find, especially with women who believe in God, like they've been taught the separation of church and state, which, does make sense when it comes to all kinds of other things. But in your business, how do you marry up the fact that you are driven and ambitious with honoring God in the way that you work? And we separate that. And so then what I find is that women are like, well, my church community totally gets when I talk about faith, but they have no idea what I'm talking about business.
Mhm.
And my business besties and my tribe, when I say I'm going to do this God's way, or I'm going to redefine hustle, which I know we're going to talk about in a second, they kind of look at me sideways. And
Yeah.
you're so right that like what's happening in your life and happening in your business, it does go together. I love that you use the word harmony versus balance, because balance I think is so misused. And harmony is really where those things happen, because sometimes it's going to ebb and flow. Sometimes your business is going to take priority, but underlying all of that is understanding where are you anchored, because only from that place can you truly be operating in harmony with the assignment that you have.
Yeah, yeah. No, yeah, I don't like the word balance. I think
Yeah,
it's such a there's never a time in our life where we're in
never.
balance ever. It's always an ebb and flow with kids, with your work, with everything. It's always ebb and flow, and we have to make sacrifices for other things, but we also know, in that we make different sacrifices in
Mhm.
other areas. So
For sure.
yes, I'm with you on that. And I also like that you said earlier that, coming from that place, I think we can help serve other people and teach people when we've walked in those shoes, right? It's really
Yeah.
hard. One of my mentors said to me a long time ago, and I've never forgotten it, is that you don't take advice from people that you wouldn't play traces or trade places with. And so I've always looked at the idea that, we cannot lead where we will not go. And so I
Mm,
think it's a
mm.
beautiful place when you can look at what you've gone through and taken maybe some of those negative situations and said, okay, it's not about where I am right now. That's great. But we want to know how you got there. How did you go from here to here? And that's the part that I can
Yeah.
show you is how I came from this place to this place.
Yeah, I always think of it as a long time ago, 2012, I had a coach and he said, entrepreneurship will fillet you open, which
Mm.
mentally makes me think of an autopsy. But anyway, but fillet you open, like it will reveal things that you could never have experienced outside of entrepreneurship, right? Because there are things that you need to do as an entrepreneur that you wouldn't necessarily do in a workplace. Not that there's anything wrong with the workplace, but what that means then is that there are things that you're going to have to face and that you're going to have to work through as you walk this out. And so therefore, sometimes as I'm working with clients, I'm saying, like, listen, I just dealt with this 6 months ago. I know exactly where you are and how you feel and what's keeping you up at night. I'm not guessing about it. Like, I've been there. And sometimes maybe whoever's listening, you don't have a coaching or consulting business and you don't see yourself as a leader. But if you're one or two steps ahead of someone that's coming up behind you, you have a hindsight that they could use as their foresight. And
Right.
so lifting, we always say like lift as you rise. Don't underestimate that if you've been through it, that you can look back and say, you know what, no, I can help you. Yeah.
Yeah. That's good. It's good, Erin. I like that. The hindsight for the foresight. That's good. It's
Yeah.
like a
Yeah.
like a little catchphrase or
Yeah.
tagline, right? I have the hindsight for your foresight. It's good. It's good. All right. So yeah, let's talk about this redefining hustle then, because I know this is something that you're passionate about in what you do. And like I said, I love what you're doing. I feel like you and I are doing a lot of parallels. And I use the word burnout in mine too, because I say I'm helping women, grow their businesses healthy in a healthily and sustainable
Mhm.
way so we can prevent burnout,
Right.
because we've all been there. And when you're in that place, it's just not a great place. And how do we help women grow these businesses, redefine their hustle? I like this. So let's talk about it.
Yeah. When I started my coaching business in 2018, what I really felt God gave me was this idea of hustle with heart. And heart stood for helping entrepreneurs align results to God's truth. And where it came
Mm.
from is a friend of mine said, well, we're ambitious women. We're high achievers. We're still going to hustle, but we just do it from a place of, purpose and heart. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. So for a long time, that's really where my message had been, and where my podcast was the Hustle with Heart podcast. Last fall, I started to see this emerging trend called anti-hustle. There's a lot of noise about that. So as I started to look at it, I'm like, listen, I'm an ambitious person, but how are we defining hustle? So I went to look it up, and what I found was two things. Number one, there are so many definitions of hustle, and the vast majority of them are very aggressive, frantic energy, pushy, making it happen in your own strength. But the first definition of hustle that I found on dictionary.com was to work with intention and a sense of timing. And then I started to ask men and women of all different backgrounds that I know, like, how do you define hustle? Again, the majority of them were saying like, it's like you want to bowl people over and all of these. But I had a couple of people that said, I think of hustle as like having the consistency and the stick-to-itiveness to see it through. So I had read a book by a woman named Melinda Fuller. It's called Obedience Over Hustle. And what she pointed out was, if you look in the Bible, the word hustle is not in the Bible, right?
Mm.
But if you look at how Jesus worked, like even in the book of Mark, he worked with small groups, he worked one-on-one, he worked with large groups, he worked with intention and purpose. So you could say, if working with intention, purpose, and a sense of timing is what hustle means, that's actually what Jesus did. And therefore, he had greater peace. He was always seeking his Father's instruction. He was always taking time to rest. Like, these are all things that we know we should do from a business perspective, but we don't, because we have to keep going. I have a cup actually in my cabinet that says, hustle till your haters ask if you're hiring. And I thought, man, that is just like too far in your face for me, right? So as this anti-hustle movement was starting to come about, and I was doing that research on hustle, what I came to realize is, the issue isn't that we hustle, because I don't know about you, Jennifer, but like, I like to go and I like to have things going. I like to have things hopping in my business, right? The problem is how we pursue it. The problem is how we define it. So could we redefine hustle to emulate the actual definition, but also emulate Jesus? In other words, can we work with intention and purpose and a sense of timing? In other words, a sense of urgency, right? But always seeking our Father first. Like, can we emulate Jesus as we work? And what came out of that was this conversation with Christian women about, well, what if we redefine it? Because here's the thing, the definition exists, but nobody's using it. So can we redefine it to mean that we're working from a place of clarity and serenity? Like, yes, there's going to be challenges. Yes, we're going to have to work hard, but can we do it from a place of focus that's not leading to overachievement or overwhelm, or, like you said, burnout? And I believe that we're in this tug of war, because the world is very loud and wants us to hustle from an aggressive standpoint. But then the anti-hustle movement is like, no, rest, and I just thought there's got to be middle ground. And so that's where I come from. And many of the women that coach with me, that's exactly where they are. Like, I'm just tired of doing this the world's way. And I'm like, sweetheart, God made you ambitious, but he did not make you to do this the world's way. And that's the rub. Like, you've been successful to this point, but there was a saying in network marketing I used to hear all the time, is like, the people who got you to here are not going to get you to there.
Right.
And so that hustle the world's way may have gotten you to where you are, but if you're building or you're scaling or you're creating another vertical in your business, that same hustle will kill you if you're not careful.
That's good, Erin. That's good. And I heard that too in network marketing too, about the people that got you where you are now are not the same people that get you. I think that's so true in business and in life in general. If you're continually evolving, that's all wins into a whole another conversation about your circle of influence, because as you continue to grow, that changes and evolves with you. Right. And so same thing in business. But I
Yeah.
like this whole idea of redefining the hustle. And I think, like you, I'm in that middle ground too, where we have to be okay with, yes, those of us that like to hustle are going to hustle. I feel like it's just in our DNA that we
Yeah.
like being busy. We like achieving, we like driving things and making things happen. But then, yes, there has to be that middle where we're not, anti hustle, that we have to like, no, that's totally out of the picture, because we're just not going to do that. We're not going to thrive
Right.
in that kind of
No,
environment. So,
no. I don't know about
there,
you. It's hard for me to sit still, right? Like I was having this conversation with probably one of my daughters, and she's like, I just cannot. I physically, like, it is so
right,
hard for me to rest. And I said, the problem is, as women who like to be in motion, we are not good at resting. And so then, when
right.
do we rest? When we're laid flat out because we get an injury, or
Yep.
we have a stomach issue, or God forbid, something worse that slows us down. That's the only time that we'll rest. And it just doesn't have to be that way.
No, no. Interestingly enough, I don't know if I mentioned this to you. Well, first of all, this morning I did one of my workouts. I did a 15-minute part of it. It was a 45-minute workout. 15 minutes of the workout that I did was a meditation type part of that workout. And it was funny because I went through this and I'm like, wow, that was like really long for my workout. Because they're usually, when I do this thing I'm going to tell you about, it's usually only a 30-minute workout. And this one was longer. Well worth it. I felt so great afterwards. But the program that I'm talking about, interestingly enough, because I may have shared with you or may have not, I work out every single day. I've worked out for many, many years. And that's part of my way of taking it down, like having time for
Mhm.
myself, self-care, focus, get my into my space where I'm alone and I can do that. I don't like working out with other people because
Right.
that time is very sacred for me. I don't want to talk. But interestingly enough, I signed up for, and I've shared this with many people. I signed up for this Groove fitness thing, which is basically an app that you get online, and it's dancing. And when I mean dancing, it's like if you were to go into a club or a bar where and start dancing, like they show you the moves, like they show you a very basic move, and then you take the move and you do it any way you want to do it. So you can do the arms, you can embellish it, you can take it high,
Right.
low. It's your dance. But I started this not because I needed another exercise program. I got plenty of that. I walk my dogs every day. I go to the gym. I run. I've got plenty of that. I did it because I wanted to add it to my self-care routine as a mechanism for creativity, because dancing is good for the soul, right? Like it's
That's
just
right.
good for the body. And so here's the thing, I've only had it for a few months, and Erin, I'm like in love with this stupid program. Like I cannot take aerobics classes from anybody, but I love this program because not only do they do the workout, they do meditation, they do flexibility, they do mind, practice your breathing, all of these things that are so important to our self-care. And I think these are the pieces that really help when we
Yeah.
talk about redefining and finding
Yes.
harmony in our lives. It's that taking that time for yourself to just improve yourself, make yourself healthier and better. So you're not, down on the ground when you're hustling all the time, like you and I are doing. We're go, go,
Yeah.
go, go. But now we're taking some of that forced time to say, I'm just going to take it down. I'm just going to bring it back in and get grounded.
I'm so glad that you talked about it from that perspective too. Earlier this year, I did a uh, podcast on rest, and that rest looks so different for all of us. And I love that you talked about, like, that is what gets your creative juices going. That is what brings it down for you. And yet it is movement. So often, again, I'm gonna have to do a series on like words that the world completely misdefines. Because so often we think rest is like I'm binging Netflix on the TV, eating ice cream, which sometimes that is rest.
Right.
Sometimes we think rest is just a nap. Sometimes we think self-care only looks like going to the spa. And all of that may be true, but for some of us, rest may look like you, rest is doing that program that's dance and all of that. Rest for me is going for like a 6 mile walk. Rest for others may be going to that spin class. All of that is rest. All of it can be self-care. And we overlook that because we're so busy trying to keep up. And whether we want to admit it or not, we so often have our neck on swivel because we're looking at what's everybody else doing and how far are they getting and all of those followers and all the things. And here's the thing, friends, whom you are meant to serve, whatever you believe, like God has already placed them in the path. right? He may just be waiting for you to finally show up in obedience to say, okay, I'm going to do this way, right? So we don't have to be running around crazy, looking left and right in the comparison and all the things. But I think if we incorporated that self-care on a more consistent basis, when I would do strategy days with my clients, part of us mapping out their strategy is, okay, let's map out your self-care. Where is that
Yeah.
going to fit in? What day of the week are you not going to work? What day are just going to be meeting days? Because you have to preserve that energy to be able to put it out into the marketplace and build or scale. Like it's a fact.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I've even gone as far as, like, because I do similarly the same thing. I've gone as far as saying that self-care is your vitamins. Like
Yeah.
it's not even
Okay.
really a negotiable. It's not a question of, are you going to do the self-care? I don't
No.
care what your self-care looks like, but it's not really a question of, are you going to do it? It's a question of, when are you going to put it in? Because if you're not doing these pieces that add value to yourself as a human being, you're really struggling. You're suffering. You're
That's
not at
right.
your best potential. You're not showing up at your best potential. You're not working
That's
at your
right.
best potential. It, and I think that's where people really, they come up with the idea that I don't have the time to do it. And I say, you really can't afford not to do it. I mean,
You
it's
can't.
that important. And the only reason I speak to that is because I have dealt with medical situations that have compromised my health. And so you may say, well, that's because you've had a medical condition. But I know for a fact that when my emphasis is on my self care, when I make sure that I get those pieces in every day, I perform so much
Better.
more effectively.
That's right.
I
That's
just
right.
show up differently. And so
Yeah.
I'm with you in this, and it looks different for everybody. And I think what you said, don't compare yourself. It is very different for all of us. I just found this dance thing. Like I said, who would have thought? Like I taught aerobics for several years. I don't even go to aerobics classes because I can't
Right.
stand taking other people's classes. But I find this and I'm like, this woman is speaking my language. It's where I'm at right now, And so even when I'm with my clients, I talk about, your physical activity looks different. For some people, it's a dance class. Some people it's yoga. Some people it's karate. Some people it's, Tai Chi. I don't know. It's different for all of us. And we
Right.
have to just figure out where we should be, where we're aligned and where we should
That's
be, and
right.
then run with that.
Yes. Yes. Oh, so good.
I know. I just got chills when you were talking a while ago. I'm like, Erin, you're speaking my language, girl.
I know, girl.
I always know when somebody's speaking my language, when the chills start going down my body. I'm like,
Yeah,
okay, we're on the same frequency. We got it going on today.
totally. A
So
hundred
good.
percent.
It's so good.
Yeah.
So we talked about self-care. Is there any like other, and obviously we don't want to spill all your juicy secrets and stuff because we want them to come to you. I always feel like, when we do these shows, there are people that are going to resonate with you and there are people that resonate with me. I think you and I have very similar personalities, which I love.
Yeah.
But obviously if there's something here for them, I want them to reach out to you. Is there any like one thing other than the self-care that you think they could just do like right now, if they're in that grind and they're really looking to maybe take that down just a bit and find a little bit of, I want to say serenity because that's my word, but we're looking for harmony. Get
For
that
real.
harmony in place.
Yeah. And here's the thing is we don't use the word serenity very often, right? We use the word calm, but we don't talk about serenity. And so here's the one thing is ask yourself why. Why am I working at this pace? Why am I going for that next level? Why is this important? I know it's cliche to say, like, always think of your why. And, Simon Sinek would say, start with why.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
seriously, like, ask yourself why. And if you think you don't have time to do that, then that's going to be really the number one thing that I want to tell you to do, which is you've got to get into a daily practice, whether it's meditation, prayer, journal, whatever, and start your day that way before this gets a hold of you, the phone, because you have got to, when you start your day that way, you are calmer. You do have serenity because even if your business is an upheaval, you can think more clearly, you can act more decisively, but you've got to start there and understand, so why am I doing this? Right? I have a great tool that people can download, which I know we'll put in the show notes, my 4 keys tool. And the 4 keys to this, which is for me what really breaks the chains of the overwhelm and overachievement and unlocks the clarity, serenity is number one, define. Are you allowing God to define you? Or if that's not your thing, are you allowing your success, your achievement, your productivity, your client list, your follower? Like if that's what's defining you, because if the worldly things are what are defining you, you will always be on shifting sands because they're always changing, right? A
Right.
couple months ago, somebody, some social media person was like, "Oh, well, Instagram isn't gonna now they want you to do static photos instead of reels." And we're like, "Wait a minute. It was right. It's never changing. So you've got to define. That's the first key. And define what success means, right? Because you may be hearing all the noise of have a six-figure business, but maybe that's not what defines success for you. So
Right.
you've got to uncover that. The second key is direct. So for believers, God gives us the direction. If we know that our identity is anchored in him, then we are trusting to say, okay, show me, Lord, what is the work you want me to do? Or who do you want me to serve? Or what tweaks do I need to make or whatever, right? But make sure you're clear on what that direction is. Because if you're defining yourself by the achievement, then the direction that you're going to go is going to be vastly different than if you're defining yourself and like that success doesn't say who I am, right? So the second key is direct. And the third key is discipline, because here's the thing. You got to put action. Like you got to take the step. You have to do it. And getting into a disciplined mode of operation, a daily mode of operation, again, that starts with your prayer meditation time. You've got to be disciplined about that. And then the third is develop. To me, it's a circle. It's like a closed loop in business, right? So we understand how we're defined and how we're directed, and then we put that into discipline. And guess what's going to happen? We're going to learn some things. Those iterative learnings we're going to put back in so that we get better every single time we go around that, right? That's just a business principle. And that develop piece is hard for us because I don't know about you, but I'm a box checker. So I'm like, I know how I'm defined. I know how I'm directed. I took the action. What's next? Right. And God's like, no, 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 slow down. I want you to develop, right? I want you to develop with me. Because then suddenly we're spiraling in the mind trash. And he's like, well, I told you to pray in the mornings, but you're not doing that, right? So that develop key is really important because it's what ties everything back together. So for me, that four keys tool, some people may find really, really helpful. But, again, just as a reminder, you got to get into some kind of a daily practice around that starts before your feet hit the ground in business. And you got to ask yourself why am I doing
Yeah.
this and why is it important? Yeah.
Yeah, I really like that you said that. Ask yourself why, because I agree with you on that. Because I think when you really understand your motives and why you're doing things, it really comes back to asking yourself, is what you're doing aligning with your core values? Is this really
Totally.
important to you? And is this a necessity in your life? Right. And honestly, Erin, this is what I do with everything. When I start to feel a little bit of, I call it like distress feeling, like I
Mm,
just feel like something's not right. It really gets me back to asking the question, why am I doing this? And
yeah.
then, is this aligning with my core values and who I am as an individual? Right. And
Right.
that's, I think,
Right.
so important with this. And I think, more people need to learn to trust that, like that intuition, if
Mhm.
something's not feeling right. And if you know that you're running hard and you're feeling tired and just it isn't feeling right, there's something there that's not aligning. I mean,
Mhm.
if being in harmony is important to you like it is to me, and you're constantly going, you're probably feeling some pressure here, and you're having some cognitive dissonance with this. So I
Oh
think this
yeah.
is all good, Erin. I love that you said this, and I love that you talked about your four strategies. I think that's great. I do want to ask you, because obviously our audience is probably going to want to pick this up and and get this and check out a little bit more about what you got going on. Where do we want to send them for this?
Yeah. So the best place to go really is my website, erinharrigan.com.
Okay.
You can see everything there, how to work with me, find the podcast, my blog, my book, all the things. But go check it out. You will know when you land there whether or not you belong there. I mean,
Yeah.
I think we all have that, right? Like you go to some places and you're like, yeah, this is not my thing. So
Right.
you'll know, and there's lots of ways you can reach out to me, but that's really the central location for all of it.
Okay. Yeah, and we'll make sure to, Erin, when this goes out, we'll get the website in there and get you tagged and all that good stuff so they know how to
Yeah.
find you.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and I believe that you're so true and right about that. I went to an event the other day and it was so funny because I like the people that were holding it, but I walked in and I was like, this is just not my, I don't know, I
Yeah.
just wasn't feeling the vibe. It wasn't a bad thing. I just wasn't feeling the vibe. And I think when you're working, even I always say with coaches too, I tell my people, even when I interview them, I say, check around, because I think getting a coach is so important, and you need to find somebody that you do mesh with and you
Yes.
feel safe in that space, because I'm sure you would agree with this. I always say I'm not for everyone, and not
That's
everyone
right.
is my client,
Yes.
and I
Amen.
think that's the beauty of this is when we can recognize that as leaders and coaches and business people, that we know that our message resonates with a certain group of people, and that's
Yeah,
okay.
for
I
sure.
love what you're doing. I love what you're doing. So thank you for coming on
Yeah.
here and sharing your wisdom and your greatness. And I'm going to keep in touch with you so we can keep following your work and what you've got going on.
Yeah, back at you. I hope that this inspires your listeners, that wherever they are in their business, whether they're just starting or they're scaling and growing and all the things, that that you can step back and think, how am I going to do this differently? Because you don't have to do it the way it's always been done. I like to say you don't have to do business as usual.
Absolutely. I'm with you
Yeah.
on that. All right. Well, thank you so much. And of course, we do
Thank
want to
you.
say to the listeners, if you enjoy the show, go check us out on Apple, give us a rating over there, or click on the subscribe button on YouTube. And I always say the same thing, Erin. You guys take care of yourself, be kind to one another, and we will see you next time.